sound the great shofar for our liberty, and raise a banner to gather our exiles, and gather us together from the four corners of the earth. Blessed are you, Hashem, gatherer of the dispersed of God's people Israel. The Ingathering of Exiles, the 10th bracha, which happily coincides with the teaching in the Mishnah. There are 10 grades of holiness. The land of Israel is holier than all other lands. And what is the nature of its holiness? That from it are brought the omer, the first fruits, and the 2 loaves, which cannot be brought from any of the other lands. In ancient times, as now, we were faced with the contradiction that holiness existed everywhere, yet it was especially apparent in the land of Israel. And so while we did the best we could to live holy lives in exile, we never lost the yearning for a higher level of holiness in the land of Israel. Here in the 10th bracha, about return from exile, we're also made to wonder what will happen to the 10 lost tribes, who were exiled from Israel almost 3,000 years ago. There's a lengthy debate in the Talmud over whether these tribes will be brought back alongside those of us who are still visibly Jewish. In the interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, we are told, the members of the 10 tribes come to the world to come, as it is stated, and it shall come to pass on that day that a great shofar will be sounded, and they shall come who were lost in the land of Assyria and who were dispersed in the land of Egypt, and they shall worship the Lord at the holy mountain in Jerusalem, as it says in Isaiah 27:13. The shofar, the ram's horn, used as a trumpet, mentioned earlier in this blessing, is one of the first things that people associate with Judaism. And for good reason. It serves as our moral alarm clock during the high holidays, as a reminder of the binding of Isaac, as the soundtrack to revelation at Mount Sinai, and here, as the instrument of our cry for liberation. We're told about the redemptive symbolism of the shofar in the Midrash Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, which says the ram's horn of redemption comes from the same ram that was sacrificed in the place of Isaac by his father Abraham. We learn the horn of the ram of the left side was the one wherein God blew upon Mount Sinai, as it is said, and it shall come to pass that when the ram's horn sounds long, Joshua 6:5. The horn of the right side, which is larger than that of the left, is destined in the future to be sounded in the world that is to come, as it is said, and it shall come to pass in that day that a great trumpet shall be blown, Isaiah 27:13. And it is said, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth, Zechariah 14:9. Rabbi Nachman explains that the shofar can even be a symbol for prayer itself. He taught, shofar also symbolizes prayer, as in, from out of narrowness I called out to God. God answered me with expansiveness, Psalms 118:5. This being the narrow end and wide end of the shofar. The teaching goes on to draw another connection between the shofar, prayer, and even the land of Israel. We're told, shofar also alludes to the herbs of the field, putting their power back into the prayer, as in Yitzchak went out to pray in the field, as discussed above. This alludes to the shofar, as in upon an extended blast with the horn of the Yovel, the ram. Joshua 6:5. The letters of the word Yovel are the initial letters of the words V'yetze Yitzchak Besuach Basadeh. Yitzchak went out to pray in the field. The field that Isaac prayed in when he was said to institute the afternoon prayer service was located in Israel's Negev desert. The other image used in the blessing, the banner, shows us that flags are not just nationalistic symbols of modern nation states. They can also be symbols of spirituality. We might be reminded of the Star of David, which didn't serve as a major religious symbol for much of Jewish history, but surged in popularity when it became a symbol of Zionism, and soon came to represent the Jewish people both in diaspora culture and on the Israeli flag. Of course, we also need to remember to take caution, knowing the dangers of religious nationalism and the damage that can come from it. At the same time, this prayer suggests to me that we should reject claims that our return to Israel is simply a secular endeavor. We've davened for a return from exile for almost 2,000 years, and it's not an accident that Jews managed to recreate their state in the land of Israel, and not in the other places that have been tried, such as Uganda, Siberia, and Madagascar. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik's perspective on the Israeli flag and its religious meaning is truly moving. If you ask me how I, as a Talmudic Jew, look at the flag of the State of Israel and whether it has any halachic value, he writes, I will give you a simple answer. I'm not impressed at all by the allure of a flag or similar ceremonial symbols. Judaism negates the worship of material objects. However, we must not ignore the law in the Shulchan Aruch, Yoreh Deah 364:4, which says that a Jew who is killed by non-Jews is buried in his clothing so that his blood will be seen and he will be avenged. This is in accordance with the verse, I will forgive, but I will not forgive their blood, Joel 4:21. In other words, Jewish clothing acquires a certain sanctity when it is stained with holy blood. How much more profoundly does the blue and white flag, which is soaked with the blood of thousands of young Jews who fell defending the land and the Jewish settlement? It has a spark of holiness which flows from their devotion and self-sacrifice. We are all obligated to honor the flag and to relate to it respectfully. This is from the book The Rav Speaks 5 Addresses. Considering exile has been the experience of our trauma for almost 2,000 years, it's no surprise that we take it so seriously. This blessing draws from Isaiah 11:12, written during a previous exile of the Jewish people, the Babylonian exile. It says, God will hold up a signal to the nations and assemble the banished of Israel and gather to the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Waving a flag. The 20th century Kabbalist Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag, who emigrated from Poland to pre-state Israel, comments on this verse. We learn from this that world peace precedes the gathering of the exiles. The blessing doesn't speak of our return. Instead, it says mekabetz. It's the language of kibbutz, the word used for the collectivist co-ops created in Israel. In this bracha, we're saying, God, make us a unit, bring us together. This is a little startling because thus far in the Amidah, we've been very personal. Now we speak from a radically collective perspective. It can make us wonder, are we praying for sovereignty, for national unity? Are we praying for security in the land or security in other lands such that we can leave? To what end? Bring us together for what? For the religious Zionist movement, this blessing is a clear call for Jews to make aliyah, to move to Israel. This was not always the only understanding, though. For a long time, Haredi anti-Zionists believed we needed to wait for God to bring us back, rather than getting started ourselves. The successes of the State of Israel, though, have led more and more Jews to ascribe religious significance to the Zionist movement. That said, the concept of Eretz Yisrael as physical land is by no means all the tradition understands it to be about. Rabbi Joey Rosenfeld synthesizes different approaches from throughout Jewish history by saying, Eretz Yisrael is, for Rav Kook, everything. Rav Sharlap, everywhere. Rabbi Nachman, in the heart. The Baal Shem Tov, a state of mind. The Nazir, the voice of God. The Ramchal, our body. Maharal, redemption. Arizal, revelation. And Rashi, Hashem's. We see that this bracha is not merely a call for physical return. It's about a national renaissance of a homecoming of our unity and purpose. We can also view it as a spiritual concept in addition to a physical one. It's about a spiritual ingathering of our souls to a collective energy, a collective prayer. There's a few different types of diaspora Jews. There are those who are never quite comfortable out in exile, who always feel a sense of alienation and a yearning for home. There's also the type that holds the tension between a diaspora and a redemptive mindset, comfortable in their surroundings, but still have a yearning for home. Then there are those who assimilate so much that they reject the notion that there's another home. Then there are the ones that are so far off they don't even know they're in exile. Their roots, so to speak, have been pulled out of the earth and planted in a pot. No matter where we are, when we stand and face Jerusalem for the Amidah, and when we say this blessing, we're redirecting our attention to consider what we think the next steps of redemption will need to entail. There are other acts we can take to bring back the Jews. Many have gotten lost from the values of our tradition, and we can gently help to bring them back. Also, adopting a Jewish child or supporting such a process, so that the child not be lost from Judaism and into the system, can be seen as a fulfillment of kibbutz galuyot, I might suggest. It's specifically through galus, through exile, that we find the strength to merit geula, redemption. To be sure, We should dread the pains of exile, but there's nothing wrong with finding value in the physical reality of diaspora, where we can learn and give back and have an influence on the world. Exile is about not only keeping us away from communal presence in the land, it's also about a narrowness of purpose. And so, for those of us who choose not to live in Israel right now, this blessing of the Amidah can draw our attention to the fact that doing our holy work in the diaspora is part and parcel of this particularistic and universalistic homecoming that we're davening for. May we all be blessed in the diaspora and in redemption.